to order for Tuesday, February 16th, 2011. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Chairman Andrew.
Here. Here.
Present.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. I have a couple of housekeeping items I want to address before we begin the meeting, and that is I want to thank Dr. Mackey and also Tony Stelly for serving on this committee in the past, and I want to welcome President Guy Brame and Chris Landry to our committee. Looking forward to working with you two guys. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if condolences or congratulations are in order, but whatever.
Comment later.
Item 3 is to receive a report and recommendations relative to the inspection of residential treatment plants. Do I call on you, Mr. Beam, first?
Yeah, that'll work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in December, your committee met, and Wes gave a presentation on the treatment plant inspection program proposal. And out of that meeting, there was a lot of good discussion from the committee and others, and some questions raised. And so in deciding how to go forward, we felt like we would go ahead, and Wes will be giving a presentation here to basically answer all those questions and restate why we're doing this. It's been a long time, and I think it was helpful to say, well, why are we even considering all this in the first place? And that Wes has got a good presentation for you, and then, of course, any questions you may have, and then recommendations going forward. So at this time, I'll just ask him to get started.
Before we commence, set some guidelines and perimeters. I don't know how long your presentation is and how many questions will be asked, but let me just say that at 5:15, if we're still discussing, we'll start winding down, and at 5:20, we will cease and desist. That being said, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Wes Crane, Assistant Director of Development, Planning Department. I have just a quick, short presentation for y'all today. I believe that we have, over the past several years, we've kind of stated everything that we've needed to stay. I'm just sort of going to wrap things up and go over a few things. And like Brian said, just reiterate, why we're doing this, what this grant is for. And I had sent some questions and answers to y'all previously, and we'll just summarize those real quickly. What is this grant? The LADQ 319 grant. What's it for? Well, basically, it's to facilitate the funding to implement this mechanical sewer inspection program for the unincorporated areas. It's a 3-year grant. It will pay about 60% of the cost of what we have budgeted. The federal share is about $289,000 plus, and our local share is $192,000 plus, for a total of amount of $481,771. That's to operate this program, do it, inspect these systems over a 3-year period of time. So, the question is, why do we need this inspection program? Okay? Well, I think it comes down to 3 different things. We hold a stormwater permit. You guys do. The police jury does. That was back in 2000, I believe 2002, where the federal government said that we had to hold this under the Clean Water Act. So we have to comply with that. This is just a component of that, for us to meet the compliance of that requirement. I think it's a responsibility for us to address these health and safety needs for our citizens of this parish. I mean, if there are things that are going into our roadside ditches that may be harmful, I think that we need to take care of that. And so I think we have a responsibility to the citizens of this parish to do this. I I think we have an obligation as well to be good stewards of this parish. We have great waterways, Calcasieu River, English Bayou, you know. And personally, I use these waterways. I fish on them, you know. I want clean water. So I think we have an obligation to be good stewards, you know, for this parish. Just want to touch on some of the questions that I sent to y'all previously. Y'all should have received this this memorandum that I sent back in January the 28th, and this was a follow-up from the previous meeting where those questions were raised, and I tried to answer those, and hopefully you got a copy of that. But I'll just quickly go over them. You know, where will the inspections begin? And what I indicated in the letter, we're talking about Ward 1, Mossville. These are the most densely populated area. Ward 1, you know, South Ward 3, Ward 4 in the Carlos area. These are the areas that we currently, based on our complaint-oriented inspections, that's predominantly where we're going in, those areas. That's where we're having the issues. So that's where we're going to start. Will the homeowners be notified prior to inspections? Yes. Yes. We have to. We wrote that into our grant where we would notify people prior to us going out to those properties, inspecting those systems. And there may be special circumstances where, you know, somebody, but we'll leave information on there that they can contact us, and if there is a special situation that arises, we're going to help, you know, we're going to provide for that. So what happens if a system fails inspection? Well, you're either going to get a green tag or you're going to get a red tag. Green means good, red means bad. And if you get a red tag, we're going to list the deficiencies on there. We're going to indicate, you know, what you have to do, and then you'll have 30 days after notice. We have to give you notice, a certified mail, and after you receive that, you'll have 30 days to fix it. And I know the question came up, well, what if somebody can't fix it in 30 days? Well, you know, why can't you fix it? If if it's a problem with, you know, getting somebody out there, we're going to work with those folks. You know, we have to. It's to our best interest, I think, to do that. So, where will wastewater be disposed? Well, currently, the only place that I know of in Calcasieu Parish, City of Sulphur, is taking that. And I sent y'all, I won't go into all the numbers or anything, but I sent y'all that information. It listed what the City of Sulphur requires, an application. There's fees that are involved with that. And I won't go into any detail, but basically that's the option if you dispose of it in Calcasieu Parish. There may be other places outside the parish that some of these guys go to, I'm not sure, but in Calcasieu Parish, City of Sulphur. What are the most common problems associated with these systems? I mentioned that in the memo. Basically, you know, the motor's not operating. You know, it's either old, the electrical components are not working, ants have inundated the system, it's not plugged in, you know, various things like that. The tanks need to be pumped out. You know, those are the most common things that we're seeing right now. And then the estimated costs with repairs and replacement, again, I provided some information. We had contacted several local companies, and they were generous enough to give us some information about that. One of the things that was asked was how much was the pump out. I think the average was about $400 for a pump out. That's what it is. And then there's some fees for, repairing the motors, and then there's some service fees too. I guess the bottom line is that these are mechanical type systems, so you have to keep them up, and there's components on there that are going to wear out, and you're going to have to replace it, so you're going to have to spend some money to do that, so. And then the other question that came up out of that meeting was what agency can assist with funding. Well, there is an agency, the USDA does have an office that assists folks in applying for grants or loans. And I provided that information, I believe, in y'all's package as well. So, and those are the questions and I tried to answer those questions that I posed to y'all. Okay, what are the next steps? Well, the next step is really to execute this contract for the grant. We have it in hand. We've looked at it. We've made some modifications to it. And, it's just a matter of us being authorized to execute it. And so, now, what I can say is that it's only for 3 years. It starts, their start time in the contract is February the 1st, 2011. That's in the contract. And it would end in 2014. So that's what they have in the contract. I'm not sure if we can negotiate that. That's what they told us. It hasn't been executed, so we're just waiting to execute it. And of course, the next thing is to assemble the Citizens Wastewater Advisory Panel in conjunction with y'all in order to solicit any kind of citizen input if we need to change ordinances or adopt ordinances or amend ordinances or things like that. And that's all I have. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. So y'all have.
Who wants to be first?
I will.
Well, let's start with Mr. Landry. He's new on this.
You have the floor.
It doesn't matter to me.
Put me down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, there was some talk some time ago about helping people that cannot afford to have the system repaired through USDA grants, because there's supposed to be grants available to those people. So that's the first part of my question. I have a couple others after that, but
That's correct.
are we going to assist these folks with this, or are we going to be able to direct them to someone that can?
There is a lady that handles that, Miss Patricia Dupree. She has offered to come and speak to y'all if y'all would like for her to come and speak. But we offered to help sit down with folks, help them fill out the paperwork, because some of the paperwork is lengthy. Now they have to provide, income, that type of thing, in order to be eligible to get that money. But we can certainly assist them in filling out the information that they need.
Right, I mean, and they should. That program's for people that can't afford it. I mean, obviously, if the income is at a certain level that proves that they can afford it, then they don't need it.
They're not going to be eligible. That's correct.
Disposal of the waste that's going to be pumped out. I understand there's a sewer district here at Mallard Junction. Why can't, or do they have the capacity to be able to take some of that waste here to keep that from being hauled across the river?
That's a good question. I haven't checked into that, but we could certainly check into
That's been brought up a number of times. They want to try to get that cost down on that pump out, and of course, the more places you have to haul it, I would think that, the more competition, the cheaper that price is going to be.
Right.
Last question on the grant that we're getting. Has that grant always been available, or is this something that's new?
I think it has been. I don't know when it started, but I think there was another parish that had applied for it and received some monies for that, but not too many.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scott?
I am curious about the Mallard Junction, of course, but Is there a chance that we could get this grant, the amount of money during this process, that we could get it increased, or no, this is pretty much it?
I think this is it.
Is there are we going to be looking at other areas to supplement this along the way that would possibly?
We actually, Mr. Vickers sent me some information the other day, and there may be some available monies in other places that we could apply for.
Like if we're carrying a stormwater permit, maybe there's somewhere in that area that we could apply for some money for. Now the inspection process, when we move through with this, how are you going to rotate between the wards, or have y'all got that figured out? You going to stay 3 months in one spot, 3 months, 4? I mean, do y'all have that worked out yet, or?
I think what we're going to do with the help of our GIS folks, we're going to, have maps to show how we're going to break this out, and then we're going to go street by street until we finish. I don't think we're going to try. I don't think we would do it randomly.
Okay.
I think we try to do a system.
So you didn't plan on staying in South Lake Charles for, say, 4 months, and then you moved to Moss Bluff for 4 months, and then Carlos, I mean,
I think what I was planning on doing is putting one person in South Ward 3, one person in Ward 1, and one person in Ward 4.
okay.
Have those guys just keep going.
How are you going to be notifying homeowners? What's the process y'all going to use?
Through mail.
Through the mail?
Through the mail, and we'll probably do some postings on the website, just as an advisory that something's getting ready to happen. But I think we'll probably just do a mail out to the resident, to that address.
Okay. Now that brings me to CGov. Besides using CGov to really start pushing it, is there a way that we can somehow on CGov set up training for people to know how to look at their systems? Teach people how to inspect their own systems, and that is going to be happening in this time frame?
Oh, yeah,
really?
we have to, under this grant, we have to have a educational component.
Okay.
So we have to, in order to fulfill our obligation, we have to do educational.
All right, because I think by empowering some people, they're going to actually
sure.
know what they're looking for, going to
Absolutely.
take care.
Absolutely.
I mean, most people don't like fire ants anyway, so they're
That's
probably
right.
willing to kill the few if they realize that it's messing up their system. From the time you put a red tag on a door till a certified letter gets there, if they choose to accept it, what do you think that time frame is?
Well, it varies. I know it varies. But it could be. We typically put on the letter that we request it back, and we can put on there 5 days. If somebody hasn't accepted their letter, we can put on there, to return it back to us within 5 days.
And then
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't.
at that point, are you going to physically go out there and knock on their
Yeah, we
door?
can serve it. At that point in time, we can serve it.
So from the time the red tag's on there, with the certified letter going out, you're probably looking at a little longer than, probably more like 6 weeks to actually correct the deficiencies that were noted when the tag
Oh,
was
yeah,
left.
I would think so, yeah.
And the last question would be, we don't have to assemble this Citizens Wastewater Advisory Panel before this moves forward, huh? We can implement.
I don't think so. No, we can do this. We can execute the grant and get that going, but if there's any changes to the ordinance that we need to modify or anything like that, or we have to have that Citizens Task Force come here.
Well, if it's in order, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put a motion on the floor to move forward with this grant so that
Second.
we can begin to move forward with this inspection process.
We do have a motion on the floor by Ms. Scott, second by Mr. Landry, to move forward and trying to acquire the grant. Is that what, that's the motion? Any discussion?
Clarify, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, if I may, I think
Yes.
it's technically to enter a contract with the DEQ
That's correct.
regarding the grant for the inspection and educational program. So it's what Mr. Scott said, but just a technicality. We will have to execute an agreement with that.
Okay, so what the motion is, go ahead and go forward. Do what you have to do.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And I'd like to add that by taking this DEQ money, using staff we already have in-house, we have now basically saved homeowners $660,000 over this 3-year period, where just a year ago we were trying to figure out how much people were going to pay for this service. So we've came up with a way right now to be able to do this service at no cost to get the inspection done. Is it?
Close, 40%. We did have to match.
Okay.
So the health unit fund, which is a property tax parish-wide, is the match. So they are paying through that, but you're correct. It's no additional funds that aren't already there from you as a police jury plus the grant, and it's great to have the grant match, obviously.
Yeah, there's no new fee for us
Correct. That's
inspecting.
correct.
This
That's
is money
correct.
that's already been paid into the system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. Ms. Griffin, you have some,
Oh, yes, I had a couple of questions. I'm in agreement with Mr. Scott. I think you've done a lot of work. I appreciate that, all of the emails and faxes. My first question, well, Mr. Scott asked that in reference to the grant. It will expire. This is a one-time grant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in reference to the amount of money from the federal government and the amount of money received from Texas Parish Police Jury, was there criteria, a certain amount that we had to put in with that? Because you gave two totals. You gave the amount of money received from.
There was a local share and a federal.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a total for that.
Okay. So the local share, was that a part of the criteria for us to accept this money?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we had to
Okay.
come up with, it was basically a 60-40 type.
Okay. So from February the 1st until the end of 2014, then that grant, everything that was
timeframe.
supposed to have been done under, including your criteria, should be completed?
That's correct.
Unless you get an extension? If
If
possible. You're
possible,
going to ask for one, but you don't know if.
I don't know
you're
if we
gonna
need
get
it. I
but you
mean,
will. So hypothetically
know.
speaking, if you don't get that, then everything should be completed by 2/14.
that's correct.
Okay. Now, in reference to the $60,000 that we saved the taxpayers, as Mr. Scott just stated, that was the total amount of $60,000 for how many homeowners approximately will be needing to do work on their.
I believe that was 660.
660,000, and how many homeowners would be affected by that?
Uh,
Well, you have about
yeah, there's about,
33,000 households, and the estimate is probably half, really rough, 40 to 50%.
I think 40% is what,
15,
yeah, 40% is what we estimated. How
That's
many?
a lot of money. That's a good
Yeah.
part. That's a good sale. Okay, thank you. Again, I want to thank you for your effectiveness on your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Mr. Hassan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Landry and Mr. Scott covered most of it. As far as the equality of areas that are going to be looked at, basically all three areas will be undergoing inspections basically at the same time.
Yes, that's
Okay,
that's
so
what my
that was
plan
one of my big concerns early on. Not only Mallard Junction, but can we look into any other facilities that, I think it's been asked several times, mainly by Mr. Atherton, that we look at assisting some of these other maybe municipalities in being, I don't know what you would call it, retrofitted or whatever, to be able to
providing
accept this.
capacity or something like that.
Exactly. If there's some assistance we can give where it makes sense that parish-wide, even in these areas that aren't going to have, they still have needs for pump outs and everything that's being hauled long ways. Another thing I would just like to suggest is on the education on CGov, the USDA assistance, the lady that wanted to speak, if maybe we could include that on that CGov
Oh, absolutely.
along with the education so the public knows that's available.
And we can provide a link to
That would be
her.
great.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Griffin, you going?
Yes, a quick question. In reference to the USDA grants and loan, they would be based on the income of the individuals that's applying. I would be anxious and ready to hear from her to get some of that information. However way you do it, whether it be CGov or as long as I get some information
Sure,
on
absolutely.
the eligibility of it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hassan, do you have any more?
That was it.
That was it? Okay, Mr.
Thank you.
Spell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know we've covered this, but I just want to accentuate it, a couple of questions. There are no inspection fees as part of this program.
That's correct.
Second question, sampling of discharge. This program will not include sampling each discharge point for each mechanical system.
No, sir, it will not.
Is there any sampling or testing that will occur as part of this program?
The only testing that will be provided is what DEQ already does, and that's at our discharge points for the stormwater for the MS4 stormwater areas, and those areas are already established along the river. So they test along the river.
And as part of this program, we will not require residents to get any testing?
Oh, no,
or sampling?
no, sir.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues on the committee, there's two things I believe that will happen, and I could be mistaken, but I believe that this inspection program will create a demand for some services. Two, it's going to cost people some money who have to get their systems repaired or fixed. I would propose to the committee, unless it's in conflict with the requirements for the grant, I would propose that maybe we shift to a 60-day compliance period, just for logistical reasons. And I would like to propose that to the committee in contrast to a 30-day compliance period, just to give people time to set up appointments, line up the people they need. It gives them a little assistance if there's funding issues, so on and so forth. So I would propose that to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Landry?
I'd hate to disagree with you, but not that much. I don't agree with that. Just leave. They're going to work with people on a one-on-one basis. If you give them 60 days, they're going to finish it in 59. Or that's probably how I would do it. I'd wait to the last minute. I don't suggest that. 30 days is fine. Most people get it done in 30 days. If he comes back to us and says there is just a backlog of work and these folks can't keep up with it, or so many repairs, hey, we'll address that at the time. But for now, I'd leave it at the 30 days. I couldn't support that.
And I guess I would be glad to come back and report to you to see if that's working or not. I can let you know.
Well, that's why we have a committee, and that's why we have discussion,
That's
Mr.
right.
Beam.
Well, and on that note, Mr. Chairman, Wes and I have been talking, and I think our philosophy was kind of what Chris was saying, that a lot of people may have no problem with it, but if they do, we want to work with them. But either way, I think, Shannon, you could just, if it would be okay, ask for that issue to be discussed by this committee that's got to review the ordinance anyway. That's the kind of thing you want committee is for, to bat around how it's enforced, and they certainly could make that a point in there and let them kind of chew on that. That's up to you. I'm just saying there is an opportunity if you wish to do that.
Well, let's not stray too far from the motion on the floor. And
Call for
you get some more comments?
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Thank
As
you.
long as they're relative to the motion on the floor.
I don't want to interrupt Mr. Spell. If
Well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, as long as the compliance time is not something that is attached to the motion, but I think Mr. Bream brings up a good point. The purpose for that committee is to be there to give input, so I would be interested in hearing what they have to say about it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Hess.
Early on in the discussion of this, an inspection is supposed to be done by DHH. Is that correct?
Well, under state law, they do have the authority to go out and do inspections.
Then it's not that they're required to do it.
That's right.
Okay.
I think they do they have limited folks. They work a 5-parish region. They actually, I think they go out and do like maybe 10% of the applications that they receive, and so that's not all of them. So
Okay.
it's just out of a 5-parish region.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Scott?
If this is passed tonight by the full jury, when do you think the first inspectors will be on the ground?
I think we can probably do it pretty quickly if we, since we're using mostly in-house staff folks. We are going to have to start notifying, getting ramped up to do that. So I would say 3 or 4 months. So
Back to the DEQ testing the stormwater runoffs in certain areas. Have they noticed that you would know of, you might have to check on this, in the past since they've implemented stormwater, has the water got better that's being discharged because of the practices that are set in place? And on the second part of that, how could we make sure that you tag this so that in 3 years we can look back and see if all these inspections and keeping mechanical systems up has changed what is being discharged?
Well, I think Barbara Monroe is here with our office, and she sort of oversees the permit for the parish. She may be able to speak on that behalf if you'd like to. But we get reports from DEQ on the water quality and everything, so we know basically what's going on. And there's a lot of things that come in storm water, that they're looking at. It's not just fecal coliform, it's other things. But hopefully it's going to reduce fecal coliform and closure of beaches.
Is it all right if Ms. Monroe speaks to that issue, Angela?
As long as it's relative to the motion on the floor.
Barbara Monroe, Calcasieu Parish Planning and Development, Stormwater. The answer to the question is, are our waters better? And according to DEQ, not necessarily. And it's primarily the fecal that has been a concern. We've had a couple of total maximum daily load letters come across that they're looking and saying, yes, these samples are not getting better, they get a little bit worse. So it is kind of important. On the good side, that's one of our big problems in Calcasieu Parish is the fecal coliform issue. We do not have what some other parishes have to deal with in the way of heavy metals, other issues like that. So all in all, I've got to say our waters are pretty decent, but that is one issue, and it is not just environmental, it is health related. So I do want to stress that. So does that answer your question?
In your professional opinion, do you think in 3 years this program is going to affect that discharge? Do you think there's going to be a noticeable difference?
I would hope that be the case, because if we fix those there, I think there is a direct correlation that is known around, not just in the state, but across our country, across our nation, that any of the failing mechanical systems or failing sewer systems are affecting our nation's waters and other states. It's not just here in Calcasieu Parish, not just in the state of Louisiana. So I would hope that we can address it, and if nothing else, we're giving it a good college try to make sure it does work. And hopefully, when they come, the DEQ goes back out again for a resampling, which they've sampled periodically, and I think it's like about every 3 or 4 years. So when they resample, that we would see a positive relationship, that there was something good done as a result of what we're attempting to do tonight.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Mr. Hassan, you have another comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the new inspection team, our present complaint-driven system of doing inspections will still be intact?
Yes.
Because it would be a safe assumption that those may rise.
Sure.
As people are having to fix theirs, they're going to notify us of others that haven't been inspected yet.
I would imagine so.
Okay, so that person...
That's not going away, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion germane to the motion? We do have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Crane?
Mr. Size, cease, Mr. Size.
Yes. You want to address the committee? Step forward.
I think he wants to address it to Wes.
Give us your name and address. We know you don't live at 122 Vine
Actually,
Street.
He just moved
actually not
last
for the
week.
committee, it's actually for Mr. Crane. And it deals with the two parts of the question, because on number 3, it asks what happens if a homeowner system fails an inspection. And on number 5, it says what are the most common problems associated with an inoperable mechanical system. And so my question is, what is an inspection? What are you calling an inspection? You said it fails an inspection. What is an inspection?
Well, the inspection is really to go out there and look at the components of the, of the mechanical plant. And the components are the motor, the electrical hookup. We typically look inside, we take the portholes off and look inside the tank to see if the solids are built up. That's what we're looking at. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and then on part 5, where we said some of the most common costs, some of the most common costs is, the failed systems or the motors. Also, it states non-working electrical outlets due to improper wiring. So, is the wiring a part of the inspection? The improper wiring.
Yes, when they put in a mechanical system, you have to have electricity for them to work. So the option is to either hardwire that into a breaker, or you can have an electrical outlet that there's a pigtail on the motor itself that you plug it into. Well, that electrical outlet has to be properly done.
So
wire.
that inspection also involves electrical also.
Yes.
So you can't get something. See, we talked about the motor and stuff, but when you said this, you're actually saying that you can't get something if we come out there and find that you hooked it up improperly by the wiring.
That's correct. It actually could be an electrical code violation.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Anyone else want to address the committee on this issue at this time? We have a few minutes left. If not, any other comments? You have one comment, don't you?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just request that staff advise the committee of time and date of the Citizens Advisory Panel when they meet, so that we're aware of the meeting and can participate if need be or desired. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, and Mr. Beam, I'd just like to know when are we going to have an implementation plan of some projects that we're looking forward to beginning to figure out some funding for? I know the studies are done and all that. I'm just curious of when are we going to say this project is definitely one we're going to try to tackle?
You're talking about the other elements of the wastewater?
Yeah, I'm talking
issue?
about tackling wastewater, beginning to chew at this $600 million trinket.
Yes, that's been going on. Alan is responsible for that side. Alan, well, he was here. For tonight, we knew we needed this inspection for the timing, and we are really close to having a lot more definitive information on that. But if you have a specific question, we can. But we're getting our ducks in a row, I guess, is what you'd say. But there's a lot. As a matter of fact, I know Mr. Meyer and Mr. Faraci are here. There's Alan. Why don't you go ahead, cut me off, and say something more useful?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Mr. Scott?
I was just curious on an implementation of certain projects that we are going to begin as a jury to try to address as far as major wastewater issues.
Well, where we're at in the contract that was just initiated with the Affinity Group is really in task 1. There's about 7 or 8 tasks on that thing. Task 1 is drawing up a draft implementation plan. And what that really does is lay out a couple strategies that we'll have for the different areas. As you know, the different areas are going to have slightly different strategies. Picking those projects that we think we can do and finance and those sorts of things. So we had estimated for about when the task 1 kicked off for about a 60-day period to bring you, the wastewater committee, a draft implementation plan. From that, we would hope that y'all would send us to with some sort of agreement that, okay, go to the cities, go to the municipalities, and start working the deals in terms of buying capacity or getting capacity in the systems that exist. Moss Bluff, it's a little different. You start chasing bigger grants. With that, we'd go through a series of tasks that are really just public meetings and different kinds of meetings. Come back to you around task 5 and have basically a finalized plan, implementation plan that we would more or less start to design projects, I guess, thing we all want to do. So Right now, we're in that very first task one of developing the strategic plan for implementation. Our groups here tonight really don't have anything to present. We've had a couple meetings since the contract was signed. A lot of conversations and trying to strategically plan it all out. And in the next couple weeks, we'll be here giving you a pre-draft of the draft, I guess, so we make sure we're working in the right direction.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more or any other matters come before the committee at this time? I want to thank Mr. Crane. I want to thank the committee for the participation. And thank you, Mr. Wainwright, for your input. If there are no more questions or comments, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion second on the floor to adjourn. Any opposition? We stand adjourned.
Dated Wednesday, February 16, 2011. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Andrew Carr?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farmer?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Present.
Mr. Petrie?
Here.
Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Dr. Mackey?
Present.
Mr. McMillan? Mr. Scott?
Here.
Vice President Spell?
Here.
Mr. Stelly? He's here. Mr. Science?
Present.
Mrs. Trini?
Here.
And President Brown.
Thank you. And I kind of went out of order there. We'll have the invocation by Mr. Collins, followed by the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have invocation by our Reverend Arthur Cullivan, Cathedral of Faith Baptist Church. Rev.
Let us pray. To our Father, the Most High, and the Most High name above all. Father, we thank you for this day that thou hast made, and certainly you have allowed us to rejoice and to be glad in this day. Now, Father, we have assembled here on this evening. We ask, O Lord, that you look upon the presiding president and his cabinet, Father, of this juror. Father, those that are present, Father, we pray a blessing upon them right now. In the name of Jesus, Father, we pray for our President of the United States. We pray, Lord, for the governor of this state. Lord, we pray for our mayor of the city of Lake Charles, Louisiana. Father, we thank you for this moment, for you made it possible. We pray that you will be in charge. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And amen.
Join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask if anyone in the audience has a cell phone, if they just put it on silent. And also, if you want to speak on any item on the agenda tonight, fill out a blue card. They're located in the back of the room back there, and just bring it up to Jessica. We'll make sure you get to speak on that item. We'll go to item 5, receive report. Oh, also, before I go to item 5, I'd like to recognize who we have in the audience tonight. We have Chief Judge Lynn Cottrell visiting with us tonight, Judge Kent Savoy, Judge Robert White, Judge Mike Canaday, and Judge David Ritchie. Thank you all for being here tonight. Okay, item 5, receive report from the Honorable Lillian Cottrell, Chief Judge, 14th Judicial District regarding district court operations. Judge Cottrell.
We've already passed around, and you should have at your seat a brochure with a lot more information than I'm going to mention today. But I wanted to, on behalf of the court, come and give you a little idea of what it is that we do. We often interact with y'all, but it's only when we need some kind of improvement to the facility or something, and I think it's important that we communicate more with you about what we're doing in the court and for the system as a whole. Every day in Calcasieu Parish, the 9 judges of the 14th JDC serve the citizens of Calcasieu Parish, and whether it's a car accident or a murder trial, or we remove children from a parent, the judges serve those people and dispense with justice. We don't make the policies, we don't make the laws, we just apply those laws and rules that are enacted to the particular case we see. And we hear the cases, we listen to the facts, and read the law, and then apply those laws. And so that's kind of the traditional role that people see judges as, and that we sit in a courtroom all day long, and that's what we do. The decisions we make, though, affect the citizens of this parish, and even you as an agency, and they affect things that are important to people, whether it's their money or their property or their children or their freedom. And so we take our responsibility and our duties, both to the citizens and to the parish, seriously. When we decide a case, we are mandated to be both neutral and impartial. And I think often, sometimes that creates this image that we are distant or that we're isolated. And I think sometimes that distance between us and other people even rises to the thought that we're arrogant or that we isolate ourselves from working with others. And it's not enough that you, as our governing body, as well as the citizens, only see us in a traditional role, but it's important that you know what else we do, both in our community to serve our citizens, as well as both on a local and a statewide level. Just some background information. We have there's 9 judges on the bench right now, and the way we have it divided is by civil and criminal, as well as family and juvenile. And there are 6 that serve in civil and criminal, and there are 3 of us that serve in family and juvenile. Our personnel consists of generally administrators. We have 1 hearing officer. We have multiple court reporters who handle all the different types of cases, paralegals, law clerks, secretaries. We have pretrial diversion coordinator, which I'm going to speak about, domestic violence specialists, and 2 different juvenile specialists that work with both delinquency and teen court, as well as the foster care cases. The next slide gives you some information about our filings in 2010. We had a total of 26,693 cases filed in the 14th JDC, and it's broken up by the type of cases on the slide. In your packet, I'm not going to go over it, but it does explain what those cases are and what they kind of involve, and I'll give you some more information on that. You can see I've done a little graph here just to show you in the last 11 years where we've been on filings in the 14th JDC, and we hit a low point after the hurricane, but we stick around the upper close to 30,000 a year. This shows you a little bit about the civil filings. They remain pretty consistent, and up until recently, we did not divide domestic cases out, so that's the total civil filings. And our total last year for those was about 6,000. Next is our criminal filings, and this includes all of them. And as you can see, those are continuing to rise in Calcasieu Parish. And it doesn't include traffic, but those include all the felonies and misdemeanors, which was about over 9,000 last year. And this next one breaks it down by the types of cases, and you can see the majority of the cases are traffic, and you can see the misdemeanors, felonies, and DWIs. We did have a spike in DWIs last year. There's been more of a push from the district attorney on cracking down on DWIs. The last 5 years, this gives you a little breakdown on domestic. We're pretty consistent there, regardless of what's going on. Unfortunately, we still have divorces and custody and issues. And one thing that's, I'll talk about a little more, but is domestic cases really don't end. Other cases, criminal, at the end of the trial, it's over. Civil, when you have a jury, or the judge makes a decision, the case is done. Domestic, they hang around for a long time. Until children are 18, they can come back, change custody, reduce child support, so they continue. Here's juvenile filings. This is an area that y'all as an agency interact obviously very closely with us, and I'm not going to speak tonight much at all about juvenile because I know Dame Bowen keeps you really informed on everything we're doing, but you can see where we are on those. And the next one shows juvenile filings by the type. Child support cases are the highest, and then comes our FINs in delinquency, which is OJJS cases. This shows you a pie chart just for the civil and criminal, so you see what percentage of filings we have. The majority on the civil and criminal side are traffic cases. And the next is the felony cases. And then this shows you what type of filings and percents we have in family, which the majority are domestic. And then our next biggest chunk is child support cases. One thing I want to touch on quickly is how the Supreme Court looks at our caseload. Filings is not how you get new judges. Each type of filing is worth a certain amount of point, and it's all a statistical method that determines and predicts how much time we would be spending on those cases after a lot of research is done. And so the one that is the most points that we do in this jurisdiction is our juvenile cases that are children removed and placed in foster care. And I'll talk a little more, but we're a model court in the country, and so we get the highest points because we spend the most amount of time on those cases. The next is the felonies, and then it goes down from there. And the one that I did leave out was civil, regular civil cases as opposed to domestic, and they're at 1.5. And one thing I just wanted to show that's kind of interesting is this is a comparison on the civil and criminal of what on the left is when you look at it by filings, and on the right is when you actually look at the workload. And you'll see the difference. So for the civil and criminal divisions, when the largest filings are the thousands of traffic, you'll see where they statistically spend the most of their time, which is on felony cases, the murders and then for family and juvenile, the largest are domestic, and then comes child support, but our time is mostly spent on domestic, and then those foster care cases. Something that I know touches y'all is our jury trials and the expenses incurred for summons juries and paid for jury services. Last year, we had 18 civil cases and 15 criminal jury trials. And, I went too fast. I don't know if that goes back. But the next thing is a chart to show where we are, a graph on how we've done the last 10 years on the number of trials. The next thing I want to touch on real quick is specialized or problem-solving courts in both the civil side and the family and juvenile side. And those are the trend in the country, and they are courts that where we take the worst offenders that should be in the Department of Correction prisons or should be in juvenile detention center and separate those out. And for those that we can work with, we try to do specialized courts, and we try to solve the problems that underlie and what it is that got them there in the first place. The judges who run these courts have a lot of extra training so that they can both consider the harm to the public if they're out, as well as trying to rehabilitate them and provide them treatment. And right now in civil and criminal division, the first one we have is drug court. That was started in 2007. That's run by Judge Cannaday and Judge Ritchie. And it's in collaboration with the District Attorney's Office. It's a 4-phase program that addresses people who have committed crimes, who have substance abuse or drug addiction. They have currently 38 clients in drug court and have had 30 graduates to date. And that program is funded through a grant from the Louisiana Supreme Court. The next one they just initiated this year, at the end of 2010, is the DWI court. And the judges saw that they were having a lot of alcohol issues in the drug court, but that they needed more of a specialized track so they could make sure they were protecting the community for people who are out drinking and driving, but at the same time trying to address the treatment needs that they needed. And they've started that, and as of today, they now have 6 currently in that program. And funding for that is funded through a Louisiana Highway Safety Commission grant. The other one they're doing is a mental health court, and that is started by Judge Wyatt, and it is just literally up and running any day now. And he is, and y'all, that's one area y'all helped him on, I know, in getting space for his staff for that. He'll have both a case manager as well as a program director, and that'll work for those. And those are going to be people who have mental illnesses, who committed crimes, so they can make sure they're getting treatment and medication so they won't commit additional crime. And the last one that is somewhat specialized is the litter court, which the judges have worked with y'all as well as the district attorneys in trying to get those cases quicker to court, just in order to promote the need to not litter. In family and juvenile court, we've got several, and again, we have a whole lot of initiatives in juvenile court, and I'm not going to touch on them, but the one I wanted to touch on the most is model court, because this isn't talked about much, but we are one of only 36 courts in the country and one of only 2 in the state of Louisiana that is a model court for the cases we handle where children are in foster care. And what that means is we're a model for other courts in the country on how to implement system change and how to move those children into a permanent and safe home quicker. And so we have to commit to adhere to best practices in everything we do and continually look at how we manage those cases. And that's why those are valued the highest points in the state. And then with OJJS, I mean, I can go on, but we do juvenile mental health court, and just recently got a grant from the Bureau of Justice to enhance that court, and we do a drug court. I do the mental health court. Judge Bradbury does the drug court. And we also do a teen court that's run out of our court, and that is where juveniles who have committed lesser offenses and who are willing to accept responsibility will go and be sentenced actually by their peers. The jury's made up of peers who volunteer their time, or they're either people who have been past offenders, and that's part of their sentence is to serve on the jury. And they sentence their peers in teen court. And it's a diversion program to keep them out of the regular system. And often the peers will judge them harder than the judges. It's the reputation it has. All right, there's something I wanted to touch on that's really important to y'all, and that is the initiatives that the court's doing that affect the adult criminal system. And that is something as a police jury that I know is an interest to y'all because of paying for the jail and criminals to sit in jail. And we have 3 that we're working on and that we really believe are going to make a big impact. One is the Bureau of Justice Initiative, and this resulted when the Public Defender's Office lost funding statewide or reduced funding. They came in to offer technical assistance, and they are looking at the system as a whole and what all the different agencies, whether it's the DA, PDO, the court, the clerk, what we can do to improve the adult system as a whole. And we receive recommendations from them, and then we'll institute those. And already it's resulted in more funding to the PDO and additional attorneys, which will help move the cases. The next one, that is the pretrial supervision program. This was started in the summer of '09, and it's we use stimulus grants to start this, and it's a program where we are able to let first-time offenders out of jail so they don't stay in jail pending their trial, and they are supervised under certain conditions like maintain employment, go to educational classes, things like that. They're ones that are not a risk to the community. And we're also allowed to let out some of the ones that have health issues that are in the jails, which is a huge cost to the parish. So it's a way that we can get those out and be working with them. And the last one that we just started in like the last month is a new way and procedure for handling people who violate probation. They've been sitting in jail for months at a time, and we are going to handle them procedurally different, and they'll be able to get before a judge within a couple of weeks. So they will be moving weeks as opposed to months and get those out of jail. As I said, we do, as a court, we are out both in the community locally and statewide in numerous different ways. We are in schools. Schools come to our court. We serve on state boards. We serve with the Law Institute, and a lot of things that we can do that improve both the community system here and then on a statewide level. And in closing, I just wanted to say that if you work in family and juvenile, you're used to collaboration. It's something we do all the time, and Calcasieu Parish is clearly an envy to a lot of judges in juvenile systems across the state as well as the country. And so we really wanted to come as judges tonight and just let you know that we are here as a court. We're willing to collaborate with you as well as any other partners in order that we can improve our system and work for everybody who's in our court. We have a few things we're working. We're going to continue to work for the Bureau of Justice Initiative and implement those. We're going to be working on enhancing the technology in the court system, and we're going to continue to address the pressing need for a safe and secure family and juvenile facility. Not so much for them, but more particularly for the citizens who use those facilities, and that is a priority for us. But we are committed. We're here to work with y'all, even though we have to maintain our impartiality. Doesn't mean that we can't collaborate and make system changes. So I'm here if the other ones are here. Everybody who didn't have court, if there's any questions we could answer. Or
Lynn, thank you for the report. We, as a jury, we know how hard y'all work, behind the scenes. We don't actually see it on a daily basis, but we know what y'all do. Does anybody have any? Okay, Mr. Scott, would you like to say?
Yeah, out of your domestic filings and your family court, how much of that, just a guess, would be, I wouldn't say because of divorce, but how much of that is added in family court because of divorce? What is the workload of that because of divorce?
Well, probably 100% of the cases are either, in the family side, either stem from a divorce or from not ever being married and having children and needing to establish custody arrangements or child support.
And that
what has affected the increase are social media, internet, things like that.
And that is one of the areas where there's much needed funding, correct?
Yeah, there's always a need for services, and a lot of those people lack the funds that they need for whether it's attorney, for psychological evaluations, for treatment. So it is an area that's always important. We have a lot of money in the juvenile system and grants, but there isn't a lot in the family side.
I sit around with a lot of time on my hands, and I just come up with wild ideas. And one of the thought processes for money would be a divorce tax. And that would, that's what the family court system is there for. So, and I don't know how that works, and it's just a thought that rolled off the top of my head, So they tax everything else, trying to fix that problem, and you got a tobacco tax, you got all these other taxes. So, hey, just a thought, a divorce tax. Thank you,
Mr. Scott. Ms. Trimmy.
Thank you, Judge Trier. Thank you so much for coming and bringing this enlightening report. It's amazing what this small group of wonderful people that are dedicated to public service and accepting the challenge of being a judge, which is extremely, very difficult. It's like, like this child better than that child. You can't say. It's like being a mother. You have to discipline the same, and sometimes there's different things that you have to enact. But I just want to thank y'all personally for your dedication, for the wonderful staff that each one of you have, and for the judges that are dedicated to public service. And thank you so much. And thank y'all for coming tonight. I appreciate this report very much, and I will have time to sit down and read a little more detail, but you did a wonderful job on your presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank y'all for everything y'all
I think Kent has something to say.
Come on up, Judge. You want to come on up? Lillian, don't run off. We have a few other George want to.
I just wanted to add something. We talked about it, and we converted, when she talked about technological things, we converted what used to be a library that was full of books that nobody used, and made it into a courtroom. So we now have more facilities. I know the folks voted down a tax to allow us to build that, but we got that through your efforts and staff and people, and so we wanted to tell you thanks for helping us do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Size.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too also want to thank the judge for coming tonight and giving a report. It is definitely a pleasure having you all here to get the report. And also it's a pleasure working with you and Judge Bradbury with the youth that we work with and seeing the good things that are being done over there. My question is on the filings, on the various filings that we have. Is that a standard? Is that a national standard, or is that a local standard? As to where they all fall at.
In what? In volume, you mean, or like how they weight it?
Civil, domestic, criminal. And I guess my question would be, is that I guess understanding it from the national level, is there something that comes down nationally so that we all are making sure that we are and we are having this in the same category, so that we'll be able to compare ourselves, Cockatree Parish, with the world, with United States. I mean, not world, with United States. So that's why I was asking: is the way we file things, is that a national?
It's definitely state. I mean, the Supreme Court mandates for the clerk of court and the court as to how we count cases so that they can determine whether we need more judges to handle the volume. And they are pretty aligned with how they count them nationally.
Okay.
And in fact, the workload point concept we use has actually been copied by other states.
Okay.
But we are aligned, and I think our numbers were pretty much as everybody is. There's things like the prescription abuse problem I know y'all have heard of about with John DeRoger. That's affected our numbers in family and juvenile significantly because people forget that those people lose custody of their children and they go into foster care. And so we've had increased litigation due to that prescription drug problem also. But in general, other than things like that, or after the hurricane, they probably have more civil filings and things like that, then we're pretty much, I would think, consistent with other people.
So with that being said, that you're saying that we are, that is similar to it's throughout the state. It's all the same. How do we
They're all
compare?
counted the same
How do
way.
we compare with cities our size, as far as, or should I say, parishes our size, as far as the caseload, the workload, of what we just seen right there?
I think we're, like I said, I think we're about equivalent for our population. We're right on target. I mean, we have, like I said, some exceptions when things like natural disasters or the prescription problem. But in general, I think our count is about the same, and we're probably the 5th or 6th highest, filings, just like the size of the population. It does correlate to that pretty much.
Okay. Well, thank you. And once again, I thank you all for all that you all do. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Size. Mr. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judge, one of the questions that I had that a while back I had the opportunity to go and visit with you guys and kind of look at what you guys do on a day-to-day basis and everything. And I know it was mentioned earlier about Judge dealing with the taxes, being that the taxes had failed on a lot of things that we were looking to try to get done with that. What is the situation like now for space that you guys are dealing with? Is that getting better, or is it pretty much?
No, no. It's really. I think I sum it up best once me and Mark Murray were talking, and I just think when you look at everything this parish does for all the citizens, the parks, the facilities, what we have in family and juvenile court is not. I mean, we are doing a disservice to the citizens who appear in that court, hands down. We are having severe elevator issues. Kane Webb has been wonderful, but I mean, when you can't get off on the 2nd floor to go to work and you just go first, third for about 15 minutes, I mean, things like that affect our daily job, and it's dangerous. We really have some severe security issues over there. So now that we have 3 judges over there, one of us is always across the street, which means there's no security as we walk back and forth across the street in our robe. So we have a lot of issues. We certainly try to deal with what we've got, but we've got juvenile issues, bringing in juveniles. So they're still there.
No, whatever we can to ease the pain in that area. By all means, I think from all of us, I think we'll be more than happy to do our part.
I know y'all have already. We are grateful we tried, and we're going to come back with something. I haven't figured out what, but we're going to come back.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Hang on, Lillian. One more.
Okay.
Mr. Spell.
I just wanted to add that when we were going through that process, that y'all were very gracious and provided tours of your facilities, and just from firsthand look that I've seen by taking up your invitation. I mean, there are situations that are not good in those facilities. I know y'all have a waiting room to where you have victims of abuse that are sitting 3 feet away from their abuser, and so I would hope that in the future we'll be able to work with you and find a solution to that. But we thank you for what you do and your perseverance, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank all y'all for being here tonight. Can I get a motion to receive report?
Motion to receive.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hassel. Do you want to speak?
I did have something, but
That's okay. Go ahead.
well, it was going to be directed to Brian. I think Brian was going to say it anyway. In light of what we were just talking about, since the tax did fail, what are our plans right now to try to relieve some of those things?
I want to assure the jury and the public that that is a high priority. You have been very clear with that, and Lynn and I actually met a few weeks ago on this. And the good news is that the 901 building renovations that would allow us to move the district attorney's office to that building gives us a lot of flexibility to determine options for how, if you look at the whole picture of the family court and everything that has to be served, and providing a better, not just getting by, but a very good facility. It will take an investment, but we have more room to I guess, have a palette where you can try to figure out what to do. And I've already been in discussions with the architect on that. That is a big focus for 2011. We're going to need to have some moves before that happens. But it is, the security issue was bad. It is bad. And we're just doing everything we can to make that go as fast as we can. But it will take a little time on that.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, Mr. Scott, you want to add something?
Yeah, Brian, another one of them crazy thoughts. With the city building, the new city court that they're designing and everything, is there any way that we could look into building with them on that same facility? I mean, they're already building in their own securities and things like that that would be updating that. Is that a discussion that can at least be had? I mean, I know it's a little cheaper to go taller than it is to continue to build wider and stuff, so it's just a thought maybe you can at least look into.
Well, actually, it's a good question. We actually evaluated that in looking at the different options for the city court, which you actually, of course, are involved with as far as the operation. And there's different reasons, but it really came down to that building is just adequate for their needs. But we looked at it. One of the key components was district court, including family court, needs to be really close to the clerk's office. So it was more of, could you do something where the city court could be down here? Where it is there, it actually is a good location, but when you do that, it removes a key component that really hurts the efficiency of that operation. But it's a good question, and we have looked at it, but that is not in the construction for that building.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Spell and a second by Mr. Guidry to receive report. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. We'll go to item 6, receive report from Ms. Mary Kay Eason, Authority President, and Mr. Heath Allen, Executive Director of the Lake Charles Regional Airport, regarding ongoing activities and initiatives at the airport. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Members of the jury, I'm absolutely ecstatic that they could join us tonight. It's one of my honors to go there once a month. You know, I think they do a great job out there. New facility. I know how much money they work with, which is not an extreme amount of money for the things that they do. But, you know, they work hard for what they do, and so I'm glad that they came here. I believe you'll be interested in some of the things they have to say tonight about where the airport has been and where it's going. And it is truly only going to be up from here. So with that, Ms. Mary Kay.
Mary Kay, just state your name and address for the record.
Mary Kay Eason, 3130 St. Andrews Drive, Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to address the jury. And Mr. Scott, I want to just also reciprocate and say that we really appreciate you taking the time to come and listen to our board meetings and understand the issues that we make and the decisions that we make and the reasons that we make them. So thank you very much. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Lake Charles Regional Airport Authority. As current president, I would like to commend Dr. John Moffitt for his dedicated service as a board member for the past 20 years. Dr. Moffitt is hanging up his hat and will not return to our board following the expiration of his term or of his appointment this month. Dr. Moffitt began his service in 1991, and since that time, he has served the board unselfishly, humbly, always seeking the best solutions freely giving of his time, his wisdom, and his intellect in this non-paid position, which brings no power, no glory, very little recognition. I speak for the entire board when I say that in working with Dr. Moffitt, we have developed a great deal of respect for his leadership and for his high moral code of ethics, which is evident in his actions, in his decisions, and in his determination to stand up for what he believes is right. He's a true public servant. We'll greatly miss his wisdom and his experience, which is acquired over time and cannot be immediately replaced. However, we understand that all good things must come to an end, and we wish Dr. Moffitt and his family well. We trust this jury to appoint a successor with a comparable level of intellect and integrity, as well as the moral and ethical compass necessary to advise our truly outstanding airport manager and to make effective decisions regarding operations at the Lake Charles Regional Airport, which is a real gem for the people of Southwest Louisiana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Heath, just state your name and address for the record.
Heath Allen, 1457 Josie Blair. And I'd like to echo Ms. Mary Kay's comments and thank Ms. Mary Kay for her comments. As well, President Brame, we appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you, Mr. Scott, for those comments as well. We appreciate the opportunity not only to come and update you all, but this is a great forum for us, being that we're on CGov. It's a good opportunity to get some information out to the public about the airport. We have a really good report. These are the reports you like to give, because things are going really well right now. So without further ado, just to start, we're ending a decade that has been very challenge for a lot of people, especially for aviation. When you look at what we've gone through, we've had terrorist attacks of 2001, we've had recessions, we've had hurricanes, we've had record fuel prices. All of that makes it very difficult for anyone that's flying airplanes, and airports are kind of the recipient of that as well. But nonetheless, I'm extremely encouraged of where we stand at the end of that decade with the last 2 years, which I'll show here in a second. The last 2 years, we really are, I think, on a solid foundation with a lot of momentum going forward. So with that, I just wanted to focus on 3 topics, and I know you all have a number of presentations. I'll try and make this one very quick. I want to start with looking back at 2010, just a couple of achievements that we received this last year. I'd like to talk about some of the statistics relating to mainly passenger numbers, and then I'll also look ahead to 2011 and kind of what we see coming in the next year. So, without further ado, at a glance, and I had to throw this slide in here. We don't get an opportunity to blow our horns often, so I wanted to talk about a couple of the awards that we won this past year. The airport was selected as the Convention and Visitors Bureau Partner of the Year, Tourism Partner of the Year. We were very honored to receive that. We also received an award on our passenger terminal building from the Department of Transportation Development with the state. It was a Transportation Excellence Award for infrastructure projects over $10 million. As you might imagine, with DOTD, it's very much so roads and bridges. Aviation's always kind of we always say it's the stepchild of the organization, but nonetheless, and as such, a lot of these awards go to roads and bridge projects, that type of infrastructure. The last time an aviation project won this award was several years ago when Alexandria International Airport built their new terminal. So we're very honored to receive that. Lastly, we received an award for the Quality Award from the Southwest Louisiana Alliance for recognizing highest achievement. And this is the local level of the Baldridge Awards, which is basically based on performance excellence for the organization. So we're extremely proud of all those awards, and I appreciate you letting me blow our horn there for a minute. On to the actual accomplishments and everything. We had a couple of birthdays this past year. One of them, of course, was the passenger terminal. We never missed an opportunity to talk about this as well. because this is such a big benefit to our community. Again, $28 million building, 100% debt-free. You won't see that in communities this size. Typically, you're going to have some type of bond issue or something to build something on that magnitude. Fortunately, that's one of the we have talked about it with you before. It's one of the benefits of the hurricane that we realized from it. Nonetheless, building is functioning very well. Extremely proud of it. Nothing but rave reviews that we get from passengers and otherwise. It has taken a little bit of adjusting. It's bigger than what we've had before. It's got a lot newer technology, and with that comes increased operating and maintenance costs. But we are making our adjustments. For example, our insurance bill tripled because of this building. So it takes a little bit of adjustment, but nonetheless, we're still extremely proud of the building and happy with the way things are going in it. Also celebrated the return of the 1-year anniversary of the return of American Eagle. They started off a little slow in the market, which is not uncommon for new service. It takes a little while to gain some momentum, but I'm pleased to tell you that the service is very successful at this point. There's nothing negative about it. It's profitable. The load factors, which is the number of people getting on airplanes, is extremely good, and it's growing every month. So we're looking to hopefully add a third flight with those guys in the near future. If things keep going like they are, I expect that to happen. It's been a very good investment for us. The airport invested about $300,000 to bring American Eagle back to Lake Charles. So we went out on a limb on that because, as Mr. Scott mentioned, we have a very, very thrifty budget. But we're very, very pleased with the service. It's done wonders for the community. Another project that we did this past year, you may recognize this building. You might notice the red color. That's Era Helicopters Red, we call it. This was the temporary terminal that we operated in after the hurricane destroyed the original passenger terminal. Era actually leases that building from us now, and they've turned that into a transport center. They're now transporting over 5,000 passengers per month on helicopters out to offshore regs directly from the airport. In the past, you generally saw that type of activity happening down in Lower Cameron Parish, but you're steadily seeing that move up further north, and we've been the beneficiary of that. So the building is really nice. They've gone in and completely revamped it. It's working out very well. Some of the capital projects, we had a year full of projects. I'll run through them very quickly. Airfield lighting rehabilitation, that was our primary runway, replaced all the lights, put an emergency generator on the entire airfield so we can run all of our lights now in the event of a power outage, something we never had before. Really hurt us during the hurricanes. Terminal area, loop road, and signage. We had the big pretty terminal building. We're trying to get the rest of our facility to catch up to that building, and if you haven't been out there recently, we've gone in and put a continuous one-way loop around the terminal. We've gone in and replaced all of our stop signs, all of our directional signage. It's all brand new, really nice stuff, which I have some pictures of it after I list these projects. But that's something we're really working towards. Something very similar to what you all did with Preon Lake Park. I mean, that's a great view for people coming into our city, for our citizens, something to be proud of. So we're trying to bring that same concept out to the airport and to our campus. We also did an overlay on a road for servicing Era helicopters. We're doing a new design on our airport fire station. ARFF stands for Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting. A lot of people don't realize we have a fully certified fire station and are required to by the Federal Aviation Administration in order to have commercial service. We also installed a new approach lighting system on one of our runways. Doing a wildlife assessment. We're designing a terminal canopy, which we'll complete in the coming year, and that is an actual canopy where you'll be able to drive under and unload your bags out of the rain. That was something that we originally had planned with the terminal building, but as cost does many times, it ended up getting cut out, but that will happen next year. We also expanded our terminal parking, which is good. Both Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, we were at capacity, had people parking on grass, even with the new parking expansion. So brought our total parking to over 400 spaces, and it's filling up, which is a good thing. And then lastly, we did a lot of work in our rental car ready return lot on signage and stuff. And just a couple of examples of the signage. We put a new entrance sign in, all the new directional sign. It's the same type of signs that you would see in at DFW, and highly reflective, very easy to find your way around. And then, as you can see with the stop signs, very decorative stop sign. Moving on to statistics. Passenger enplanements, then this is strictly scheduled passenger service for airlines out in both American and Continental airlines operating in Lake Charles. Enplanements is passengers getting on airplanes. And I'm pleased to say this year we increased by about 21%. That's double-digit growth, and that's extremely good right now. If you look at most airports across the country, it's flat, possibly single-digit, but mostly flat. A lot of regions have been hit hard by the recession. Anytime you have a recession, air service is one of the first things to go. People start thinking twice about taking that trip. Businesses cut back on their travel as well. So things are moving very good in that regard. Deplanaments, which is passengers getting off of aircraft, also did very well, 23%. Couldn't ask for better. And both of these, both enplaning and deplaning passengers, is the most we've had in 10 years. So things are looking really good. And just a little sidebar in deplaning passengers, the average visitor in Southwest Louisiana spends $228 a day. When you start crunching those numbers on people getting off of airplanes that are visitors, depending on how long they stay, it really escalates quick. And the impact of those deplaning passengers is huge on the region. Total O&D passengers. This is total passengers throughout, and I wanted to show this slide. We're about 24% when you look at above last year when you look at both arriving and departing passengers. If you look at the last 2 years from 2008, we're 40% above, which I mean that's a really good growth cycle from what we're seeing. So extremely pleased with that as well. And I'll finish up with the sticks. I don't want to kill you all with a bunch of graphs, but this is just our rental car gross revenue. You might not realize, but we do about $2.6 million in gross revenue for rental cars. Now, we, the airport, don't see that money, but our rental car companies see that. And there again, that has increased by 27. That's an increase of 27% over last year. So all of our, and you can look across the board, our vending, and we track all of this. Our vending, our marketing, our fuel sales, all of it is really going up. So things are looking good. And I just end by saying a couple other comments. For January, for example, you know, we really saw that going up. January is always the slowest month of the year for us. This January, we're up 18% over last January. If you go back 2 years, 2 Januaries, we're up 65% over that January. So hopefully that's a really good sign for our economy. Airport is really, like I said, it's really indicative of what your economy is doing. If the economy is doing well, the airport's going to do well, and vice versa for that matter. It's kind of a double-edged sword. So very pleased with the way things are looking right now. Looking ahead to, I might add one other little tidbit about total O&D passengers. If you look at the Southwest region right now, which includes 53 airports in Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, Lake Charles had the second highest growth of all those airports. So now it is relative. When you look at Dallas, you're talking 9 million passengers versus us, 130,000. But when you look at percent growth, we were the number 2 airport in the region. Looking ahead, again, we've got a full slate of projects this year. Some of our design that we had last year, we're going into construction this year. New boulevard lighting, that'll be the last lighting that we have to replace. All of our parking lot lighting is new, so we're going to go in and put all new lighting on the boulevard. As I mentioned, we're going to do the construction on the canopy. We're overlaying one of our runways. We got some security and drainage going on out on Gautier Road. We're doing our actual expansion of our fire station. We're doing a South Apron expansion, which is going to be it's about a $1.1 million project to expand the apron for Aero helicopters. Will allow a lot more parking. We really get jammed up with helicopters. There's a lot of helicopters out at the airport. So working on different areas to park those guys. We're doing drainage out on the airfield. We're doing a new master plan update. We've really come a long ways in a short time with our master plan, so it's time to update that. A lot of things have changed since the hurricane. We've got additional air service, so we want to update that master plan, get our capital improvement plans updated as well. And then lastly, we're going to do design on a rental car maintenance facility to wash and do all the maintenance and maintenance on our rental cars out at the airport. So that's all the good side of it. It doesn't come without challenges. I mentioned all the projects. For example, last year, this year we're planning $4.4 million in projects. None of that money is local tax money. That's all outside money. It's all based on user fees for aviation, whether it be rental car taxes, taxes on airline tickets, or taxes on fuel. Most of that money comes from aviation trust funds, both at the state and federal level. So it's great that we're getting that money. One of the challenges, as I mentioned with the terminal building, our operating budget remains extremely low, and the cost of operating the airport is getting higher every day. Just a couple little interesting facts. The airport, which is a district tax, which includes mainly Lake Charles, part of South Lake Charles to the south border of the parish, but we have the lowest ad valorem millage in the parish of any entity. As I mentioned, it's a small district with the majority of the parish out of the district. We're about 65% self-sustained, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, as a taxpayer myself, I'm very proud of that we're able to operate. But nonetheless, it is a challenge, and that's something we're going to be looking at moving forward. That 65% mainly comes from rates and charges that we charge our airlines, all of our tenants. So we're going to be looking at that. I mentioned, you know, what our shortcomings are. Increasing operating expenses. It seems like every year we get a new unfunded federal mandate coming down. As an airport, we're highly regulated on several different levels. This year we've got safety management systems coming down. It's a whole new set of regulations. It's going to be a whole other chapter into our airport certification manual. Not getting into all the dirty details, but it's going to be another challenge that we have to have. It's going to tax our limited human resources even more to accomplish that. On the safety side, with our fire department, we're always trying to upgrade. I mean, first and foremost, before anything else, we're trying to upgrade our fire department, all of our training, and our equipment for that matter. I'm happy to say this past year we didn't have not one fatality nationwide in commercial aviation. So that's a great thing. Air travel is as safe as it's ever been, but again, we want to make sure that our airport is always at on the cutting edge of safety. We're also looking to invest in more efficient equipment. We've got a lot of old equipment out there, not necessarily the most efficient. Spends a lot of time broken down, so we're slowly trying to get that stuff upgraded. One of the big things we want to do is better service initiatives. When you look at our airfares and everything, Lake Charles, we compete directly with Houston, but we're not going to beat Houston on a regular basis as far as airfares. 35 airlines in the market, so versus our two, we're just not. I mean, in any line of business, when you have that much difference, you're not going to compete well. But one area where we can beat them every time is in service and convenience, and that's what we really want to start. We want to go the extra mile to start bringing better service to our customers, our passengers. So that's something we're going to look at investing in as well. And then lastly, marketing. While we don't have any direct control or link with the airlines, the only way that we can grow our passengers, get more flights, get more airlines, is to bring more passengers in. The only way that we can do that is by marketing. An example of where we're short on marketing airfares. There's a misconception that you can't find a reasonable airfare out of Lake Charles, and it's simply not true. We do airfare comparisons every week, and now more than ever, you can find competitive airfares. We mainly look at Lafayette. We want to be competitive with Lafayette. Like, as I mentioned, it would be nice to be competitive with Houston, but Houston's got Southwest Airlines. They've got AirTran, JetBlue, all those low-cost carriers, and the rest of the airlines. So it's going to be more of a challenge to compete with Houston. We're always going to lose some passengers to Houston. We want to keep our passengers from going to Lafayette and what we can from Houston. But we need to be out there marketing to those passengers, letting them know. I pulled our fare comparison just from yesterday, and all of our authority members, we look at this every meeting. Just for example, we take our top 20 markets, and we look at the fares for Continental versus Lafayette, 10 out of the 20 are cheaper out of Lake Charles. 50% are cheaper out of Lake Charles than they are out of Lafayette. If you look at American Airlines, 13 of the 20 are cheaper out of Lake Charles than they are out of Lafayette. So that's messages that we want to get out there. You know, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least check Lake Charles, because you can find. Is it going to be cheaper every time? Not at all. I mean, it's going to be more expensive sometimes, the same other times, and still cheaper. I've been in this business a number of years now, and quite frankly, I still don't completely. It just airfares still don't make sense to me many times. I mean, it's just it's anybody's guess on how those guys price some of those fares, but nonetheless, you can find cheaper airfares out of Lake Charles, and that's something we really want to focus on, getting that message out to the community. Just a couple other, this is my last slide, well, second to last slide. A couple of other projects. We've got continued expansion by Air Helicopters. We expect more announcements here coming pretty soon. We're working on a couple of things with those guys that we'll be announcing here shortly, so look for those to come. One thing that has hampered them is the moratorium out in the Gulf, and then with the permit issue. Right now they've got 13 of their customers waiting for permits for offshore drilling, which certainly kind of depresses their business. Right now they're still busy, but they're concerned moving forward. Nonetheless, we do have some projects coming out with them on some other sides of their business which aren't directly affected by the offshore projects. We're working on a couple of projects with our FBO, and hopefully, if everything goes right, that'll involve a couple of new tenants locating out at the airport, additional air traffic, additional fuel cells, etc. So, real excited about that. Working with a couple of entities, including our FBO, on hangars as well. We're at max capacity on our private hangars. So we're trying to figure out a way. It's difficult for the airport. We can't get grants for our hangars, so it's difficult to get the payback on those hangars. It's a significant investment, but we are working through some third-party investors and developers to try and get some different hangars. Every hangar that, I mean, even a cheap airplane these days, the cheapest you can buy is probably in the $200,000 range. Those guys pay a lot of taxes into the parish. So the more of those aircraft that we can get located at the airport, the better we all are, better off we all are. And lastly, we're looking at doing some work on our highway frontage. We want to really try and leverage that and develop our highway frontage to gain additional revenue as well. With the new 5-laning, I don't know if you've been out that direction lately, but the new 5-laning is excellent. We've got terrific access directly into Lake Charles now, and we really want to try and maximize that. And we are getting a lot of interest in our land for gas stations and things such as that. So we'll be working those as well. And I think if you take all of these slides, I think this is probably the most important one. This is all of our companies that we have out here. We have about 30 companies operating out at the airport, and that's all of them right there. It's everything from 5 employees all the way up to 600 and something employees with Air Helicopters. So, as I mentioned, that's our favorite slide. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I tried to move through it as quick as I could. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present this to you and update you on what's going on at the airport. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Heath. Sounds like y'all got a lot to do.
We're working on it. We're staying busy.
You seem real busy. We do have a few drawers, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, the name that you really want to be pushing out there, would you like to share that? As far as the airport, Dr. Michael DeBake,
Yes, that's another initiative that we're going to have. The authority voted to rename the airport complex, not necessarily the airport itself, the Lake Charles Regional Airport, but the complex as a whole, the Michael E. DeBakey Aviation Complex. We've got it on our sign. We've got a statue out there, but we're really trying to want to make more of an effort to, get it out there a little more commonly known than what it is right now. You just don't hear a lot of it right now. So that's one of our initiatives that we've got going to try and, utilize that when we have the opportunity to.
Compared to Lafayette and Beaumont, your budget?
Our operating budget right now is about $1.3 million. If you look at Lafayette, they're over $8 million a year. If you look at Beaumont, they're over $3 million a year. Interesting fact on Beaumont, they're actually a very similar market. They're a larger market than us, but as far as how they're impacted in regards to airlines, very similar to Lake Charles, in that Houston really siphons off a lot of their market. They did about 36,000 passengers this year, whereas at Lake Charles Regional we did roughly 128,000. So, but just to give you an example, if you correlate that budget, about $3 million is what Beaumont is versus our 1.3.
And your expansions on Gulf Highway, sewer would be great out there, huh?
Yeah, we've got a couple of projects lined up. We've in our capital improvement plan, and working with you, we've got a project in there to connect to public utilities in regards to sewer, and we've also got an upgrade to our sewer system. I'd much rather connect to the public facilities than our system is original when the airport was built back in 1962. So it takes a lot of effort to keep it going.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Scott, Dr. Mackey.
I wanted to address Ms. Eason. I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated you speaking for John Moffitt. John and I grew up together from first grade on. He's one of the clearest and finest thinkers I've ever known, and I do appreciate your accolades for him. It's well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Any other jurors? Heath, thank you for your report. Can I get a motion to
move?
Motion by Mr. Andrew Pont and a second by Mr. Hassan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all for coming. Okay, we go to item 7, take appropriate action on application for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, we have 2 applications before you, and we recommend they both
Move
be
on
approved.
7.
Second. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Hassan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 8, consideration of approval.
Move on 8.
Payment of all current invoices. Motion by Mr. Andrew Pont and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 9.
Move on 9.
Consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated January 20, 2011. Have a motion by Mr. Fornham and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 10, consideration of approving the wastewater study committee report dated February 16, 2011. Mr. Andrew Pont.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to do, the main topic of the meeting tonight was relative to a grant, and I've asked Wes Crane to come forward and give an overview of exactly what was discussed. Wes.
Mr. President, members of the jury, the report that I gave tonight at the committee meeting, basically it recapped what the DEQ 319 grant was for. That's the grant that we've applied for to do the inspection program, mechanical sewer plant inspection program. Reiterated the need for this inspection program, as well as summarized the questions and answers that I had provided to y'all in January for the December meeting. We also requested the authority to execute the grant contract, and the committee approved a motion to actually execute that or to allow for the execution of that grant. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Crane?
That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrew Pont. Motion to receive?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion.
You're welcome.
Received report.
Very good.
Thank you, Wes.
Discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll go to item 11, consideration of adopting a resolution declaring the malapportionment of police jury districts in accordance with applicable state and federal laws based on population data from the 2010 census. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we go any further, that is not a misprint. That is actually a word, malapportionment.
I did that good.
Let me explain. Tonight is the first step of the first formal step of the redistricting process, which every parish and all the legislative districts have to go through. And this requires you and any other governing bodies and parishes to formally declare that you do not have the adequate, if that's the right word, appropriate range of population within each district that currently exists with the new 2010 data. And I don't know that there's ever been a case where we weren't malapportioned, but that's just a part of it. And tonight's action would have that take place. What I'd like to do is a lot of information, and I know we've had a lot of presentations, but it's important data. We want to just do this in 3 parts. One, I'll give a quick update on some of the census numbers. This is just data and help you with some of the ward and city information and share a little bit about that. The second 2 parts of that would be conducted by Mr. Cade Cole, who we've contracted with, and Cade has done a great job with us, and you'll see evidence of that in a few minutes. He will go over the redistricting rules, what exactly is redistricting, why do we do it, what governs it, all of the things that have to be done to comply, and I think that really will help you and the citizens understand the task that is at hand, which is very complex. And the last part, which is the most important, is what are the numbers? Where do they fall out within your districts, and what is our challenge ahead to submit a redistricting plan, which would be the next step to go forward. So with that, I'll ask Tom at this time to put a slide up. You have in your binders, if you would turn to attachment 11, I realize that up there you're not going to be able to read it, but just as a point of reference, and we do have this information on our website for anybody who wants to see it. It's a table that shows the comparison of the 2000 census to the latest information we got with the 2010 census, and it's really the purpose of this table is to show you the ward populations, which we still use a lot here and at the police jury. A lot of people don't necessarily know what a ward is, but it's helpful for your purposes. And if you can see the indentations, we also included each of the cities. So that's why there's it's a lot of numbers on there, but the columns will give you all of the city populations and ward populations. So let me just make a few quick observations for you. You'll see under the population change and the percent change, the largest growth areas were wards 1 in terms of number, Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 4, and Ward 8. And quickly, Ward 1, of course, would be the Moss Bluff Gillis area. And that area is 2,462 higher than 10 years ago. Ward 3 would be south of Lake Charles, and because actually 99.2% of the growth between over the last 10 years is unincorporated, that means south of Lake Charles grew by about 2,500 people. The Ward 4 area, of course, covers that includes Carlos, Houston River area, north of Westlake. That all combined is 2,700. So those are the large growth areas. The others, Wards 5 and 6, pretty much stayed status quo. Ward 7 lost a little. Ward 8, interestingly, which would include Iowa and the little Blue Settlement area, Iowa grew, unlike most of the cities, and Ward 8 unincorporated grew. So 1,280 for that area is really a big percentage. You can see that. And Ward 2 as well, although in number it's 757, and that's actually 45%. So when you add all that up, the total population for Calcasieu goes from 183,577 to 192,768, an increase of almost 9,200 people, which is 5%. That's good. If you look around the state, there are some that are higher, but a lot of that is migration into parishes like outside of Baton Rouge and so forth. And a lot of parishes lost population, so I think we did good overall. Here is below that shows the municipal total. That would take every city in the parish, and if you added all that up, it's 106,414, which only grew 78 people from 10 years ago. So the cities are not growing. People are moving into unincorporated areas. You can see the unincorporated right below it makes up, again, 99+% of that total. And I'm going to show you a graph in just a second. I just added the U.S. and state population changes as well. If you would, Tom, if you could switch, I want to show you a graph And I thought it was helpful to put the trend over the last 20 years, not just the last 10. This graph shows the total population. If you look at the top numbers, and I realize those numbers are small, but basically it's the total population at the top goes from 168,000 to 192 from 1990 to 2010. So we've had a good increase in the parish overall, but look at the difference. The red is unincorporated, the blue is municipal. And in the unincorporated areas, if you go back 20 years, those areas made up 37% of our total population, and that has continued to rise to where it's now 44.8. Cities, of course, would make up the difference. They've gone down from 62.4 to 55.2. So what does that mean? Well, population tells you a lot, and you could go all sorts of ways with this, but in just your services, there is probably no service unaffected by this. If you think about all the mosquito control that has to be administered because new residences move, the committee met earlier today on wastewater. How many homes would have mechanical systems, or what sewer needs are there? You think about the roads that are traveled and the school buses that go on them and all the cars that travel our roads. Code enforcement, everything is affected. And in this case, the services are going to see increases in costs. So a lot of times we talk about tax monies and all, but the other side of that is there is a tremendous amount of services provided for those tax dollars. And the reason it's driven a lot with this body is because of the unincorporated growth. You handle a lot of services that are parish-wide, such as juvenile justice, workforce development, but a lot of it is infrastructure or development related. And you can see this is why. This is not unusual for across the state. Metro areas are seeing this, and across the country really, but there's a lot more information that will come out in April on housing and how many people per household and all that, but this is the basic stuff right now. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit more of a taste of what these numbers are telling us. And with that, let's get to the heart of the item. I'm going to ask Cade to come up, and as he's doing that, in addition to all of his work, I want to thank Alan Smith, who's been very helpful in this. Our Geographic Information Systems Department has done a tremendous job in data and mapping that it takes to pull this off in a very short time, and I think what you'll find tonight will be very helpful. Jessica is going to hand out a packet at the point where he gets into the numbers. Do you want to wait for that, Cade? Cade will cover the redistricting background, and at that point we'll have Jessica hand those out. So with that, Cade Cole.
Mr. President, I'm sure an hour and a quarter in, we were all hoping for a third PowerPoint, so I will try to be efficient with your time. But I am pleased to give this important update to the public and to the jury on the status of the parish's redistricting process. I'm honored for the opportunity to work with Mr. Smith, Mr. Beam, and your excellent staff to put this together. We'll begin our introduction by addressing what redistricting is, who must do it, and why. We'll then discuss the basic legal rules behind redistricting, the important state laws, applicable federal laws, and we'll reiterate the tight timeline that you face due to this fall being an election cycle. Finally, we'll present the malapportionment information on the existing police jury districts, showing the deviations that we discovered when we looked at the Census 2010 data. Throughout this process, you'll hear the term reapportionment and redistricting perhaps used interchangeably, but it's important to note that reapportionment is the determination of the number of seats, while redistricting is the process for redrawing the lines for those seats. You may hear the term malapportionment used, and indeed y'all are adopting a resolution on that tonight to start this process. Malapportionment means that you have districts that are illegally either above or below the acceptable population limits. And so when you are malapportioned, you must redistrict. As Brian said last meeting, all of the other area and really nationwide governments are going to be facing this same process, which occurs every 10 years because of the census. The legislature is responsible for redistricting itself, our seats in Congress, the Bessie Board Public Service Commission, and the courts. While local government is also tasked with redistricting itself, and this includes police juries, city and town councils, and the school board. The answer to the why behind redistricting is simple. It's the fair thing to do, and you don't really have a choice in the matter. The census occurs every 10 years and is used to allocate seats in Congress. But in addition to giving us the population between the states, it gives us the population trends within local areas, so that local government, like the police jury, can use that information to draw fairer districts. Additionally, the federal Constitution requires equal protection and equal treatment of people, and this has been extended to parity of voting strength. And finally, Louisiana state law requires redistricting after each census. We'll now turn to some of the key legal principles behind redistricting that are going to govern this process as y'all go forward. State law provides that the police jury must set its membership at up to 15 members. Within 6 months of the census, the jury must take action on reapportionment, but this provision is really related to a non-election year. Because of this fall's election, we'll have to be through with the process much quicker than that 6-month window. Another important state regulation relates to precincts. We are in what is the statutory precinct freeze. You may not merge or create a precinct until 2014. And we have to use those precincts to build your districts, which obviously is going to create some problems. If it is impossible to legally redistrict without splitting a precinct, you may split a precinct under very restrictive and very tight parameters. Any split must follow visible physical boundaries and must also correspond to census block boundaries, which will not always follow those physical boundaries. In addition, there's some minimum population requirements. It's important to reiterate that a precinct split may not occur simply for convenience or because you'd like a certain area. It must be absolutely required by the numbers and the law. And it's a last resort for use only when no reasonable alternative can be identified. The overriding federal law on redistricting stems from the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. In the early 60s, the Supreme Court decreed the one-man, one-vote doctrine, famously stating that legislators represent people, not trees, cows, or acres. One-man, one-vote has been applied to local government since 1968. And the law requires that we create districts that are substantially equal in population. Generally, a plan must have an overall deviation from largest to smallest of no more than 10%. This is the rule of plus or minus 5. Any larger deviation violates one man, one vote and would be illegal. We determine population equality by dividing Calcasieu's total population, 192,768, by the 15 jurors. This gives us an ideal population for police jury districts of 12,851. Deviation is the number of actual people in a district above that ideal population, while the deviation percentage, which is where the plus or minus 5 comes in, is the percentage that the district deviates from ideal population. In completing redistricting, the jury may be guided by 6 recognized traditional redistricting principles. Compact districts of contiguous territory is a main goal. And this means that boundaries should be logically adjacent to one another. And if practicable, the jury should refrain from splitting municipal boundaries. So in a sense, that means that small towns shouldn't be divided into 2 police jury districts if it can be helped. The preservation of the core area of existing districts will be a key component in any plan presented. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. You already have districts in place. The remaining traditional principles, see, I went a little far, apologize. The remaining traditional principles include seeking to maintain stable representation and compliance with applicable federal laws. Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act applies in parts of 16 states and in all of 9 of them, and that includes all of Louisiana. In these covered jurisdictions, anything involving voting, including redistricting, must be pre-cleared by the United States Justice Department or the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. To be pre-cleared, a plan must have neither a discriminatory purpose nor a discriminatory effect. A plan will be rejected if there is any retrogression or decrease in minority voting strength. Any plan must maintain the current number of minority districts, 4, districts 2, 3, 4, and 9. The 4 districts must be preserved as effective minority districts. This is generally represented by districts that are greater than 60% African American by population. However, in the last round of redistricting, the Justice Department did approve 2 plans from here in Louisiana with 57% African American populations, and one of those includes the existing police jury plan, District 2. We must also comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination like voter dilution through the packing or fracturing of minority voters. The census shows that Calcasieu Parish is 24.8% African American. And the 4 existing majority-minority districts, which must be maintained under Section 5, comprise 27.7% of the seats on the police jury. Considering these percentages, 27.7% and 24.8%, and the dispersal of voters around the parish, it seems highly unlikely that there is a Section 2 problem in our plan. Although minority voters are protected by the provisions of the Voting Rights Act, the jury is also prohibited from creating bizarre districts solely to maximize minority voting strength. Race and voting rights compliance are certainly factors in a valid plan. However, race cannot predominate the redistricting process. In the early 90s, the Justice Department refused to pre-clear plans that failed to maximize minority-controlled districts, and the courts have universally rejected this policy. Districts like the 1992 Louisiana 4th Congressional District, which you can see a map of above you, as you can see, it stretched from Opelousas, North Lafayette, through Baton Rouge, up the Mississippi River Delta, into parts of Alexandria, Monroe, Grambling, and Shreveport. This district was rejected as an illegal racial gerrymander, so it's an example of the type of thing that must be avoided. To avoid allegations of racial gerrymandering, it's important to focus on and stick to our traditional redistricting principles, which we covered a moment ago. In summary, your plan must fall within the plus or minus 5% deviation, must not retrogress, so you must keep your 4 existing minority districts, and it cannot constitute a racial gerrymander. To re-urge the delicacy of our timeline, Section 5 preclearance must be received by the Secretary of State no later than August the 29th, 2011, or the jury's election cannot occur on schedule. The Justice Department often takes over 4 months to review plans, a 60-day initial period, followed by 60 days if they deem the submission incomplete, which they almost always do to give them more time to review it. So you back that 4 months from August the 29th, and what we find is that the plan must be submitted in late April. But because of the voluminous material that has to go with it, a final determination by the jury of your district boundaries will need to occur in early April. If you don't leave your April the 7th police jury meeting with a consensus on what good district lines are that can be worked into a final submission, there'll likely need to be special meetings to resolve any lingering issues. Now that I've calmed the waters by boring everyone, we can turn to the burning issue, the numbers behind your districts, the amount of malapportionment in each of your respective districts. Calcasieu's total population is 192,768. That yields an ideal police jury district of 12,851. Using the plus or minus 5% parameters, no district may be smaller than 12,209, and no district may be larger than 13,493. However, the main goal must be substantial population equality. So the mean and median deviations amongst the districts are important and should be modest, in addition to the overall range of deviation falling within the 10% range. And we're going to take a moment to set up some larger maps. I believe you'll have smaller versions of them in your packets, but we can go over some of the specific populations per district, where some of the growth was.
While he's doing that, just real quickly, your top sheet is really the key item. The numbers, and I'll let Kate's going to go over that. The two maps attached, they're really the same thing, except one is a metro area that, for those districts, especially in the Lake Charles area, it's sort of a blow-up that gives you a little bit easier read. But any of this information, of course, any questions you have, we'll cover that as well. But
this map provides an overview of the degree of malapportionment in general areas. Many districts, like those in central and south central Lake Charles, and nearly all the districts on the west side of the river, are within acceptable ranges, and those are shown in green. The districts in red in Westlake and northern Lake Charles are too small and fall below acceptable limits. The remaining districts, including the other districts east of the river shown in blue, grew substantially and presently exceed the maximum allowed deviations. It's important to remember that deviation measures the difference between the district in 2010 and the ideal district in 2010. It does not measure how the district grew or shrunk from 2001 to 2010. We're talking about a deviation from the current numbers, not a trend of what occurred over the decade. And that's because they started at different points. For example, and we can move to a map showing some more specifics. Yeah, sorry. For example, District 4 actually grew by 143 people, or 1.2%. But since it started small and did not keep up with the parish's overall growth, it was left 8.4% below ideal, which is outside of acceptable ranges. Similarly, because they started at different points, even though District 1 has the largest upward deviation, the highest growth police jury district was actually District 8, but it started off smaller. Only 3 districts in the entire parish actually lost population. However, because of growth in other areas, 8 of the 15 districts ended up with negative deviation percentages, even though only 3 lost actual people. The districts that are below ideal population are numbered in red, along with the percentage of deviation. The districts in black are above deviations that are positive, and the corresponding district numbers are positive. Let me switch to the zoomed metro view so that we can have a better view of the actual numbers. You can see on the map the numbers that will drive the process. The districts that are too large will need to shrink. The districts that are too small will need to pick up geography and voters. This process will be governed by the rules that we talked about at the beginning. It must be done, it must be completed in a particular way. For example, you couldn't move precincts from District 1 to District 2 without other changes, even though District 2 needs population and District 1 needs to lose population, because to do that would violate the Voting Rights Act. It would retrogress by diluting the minority voting district that District 2 is. Therefore, all the districts, including those that are within ideal ranges, so even if you were on green on the first map, will need to change. the domino effect and chain reaction that will occur when you start moving people, when you're dealing with units of precincts, will cause changes throughout the parish. I'm sure that y'all are glad to know that that brings our presentation to a close, and I'm happy to address any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Cade. I'm going to let you worry about it, Cade. Does anybody have any questions for Cade or discussion? None? Cade, thank you for your report. Brian, do you have anything to add?
You might want to, sure, because you might want to digest.
Oh, I know.
Kidding. Just looking ahead as a reminder in your calendar that you approved between tonight and March 24th, when we come back to you next, that's the heart of the matter, development of a plan that we feel can meet all of those conditions. And as you can see, you got to meet all of them. And we're going to do our best to get you a plan that would obviously meet all of those and be accepted by the Department of Justice, and that will put in place the qualifications for elections in the fall. So between now and then, as we work on that and build it, we will be meeting with you and presenting you with that information. Of course, beginning any point this evening until then, throughout this process, we want to have public input, and I won't go through all that tonight, but there will be a public meeting just to hear public input. What we want to emphasize, and Kate alluded to it, it's very, very important that whatever is presented to you as far as comments, feedback, possibly somebody may have an alternate plan if somebody likes to just do this for a hobby. By April 7th is really, we need to be able to have you comfortable passing a plan by then. 21st is probably when you'd formally do it, but it takes a lot to put all this together as far as administratively and legally. So with that, if you don't have any questions this evening, the item is to formally approve the malapportionment.
Move to approve resolution.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Beam. I have a motion by Mr. Spell to approve and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 11 carries. Okay, we'll move to item 12. Consideration of adopting a resolution approving the calling of an election
12.
to be held on April 30th, 2011 by the Board of Commissioners of Ward 8 Fire Protection District Number 2 for renewal of district maintenance ad valorem tax in the amount of 14.31 mills for a period of 10 years. I have a motion by Mr. Staley and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 13, consideration of adopting a resolution indicating no objection to the following proposed Calcasieu projects in Calcasieu Parish. 13, I have a motion by Mr. Scott. Is that on the bullets? Okay. And a second by?
Second.
Mr. Collins. Go ahead and read the bullets. And their proposal of Chenault International Airport Authority, care of Airby Environmental Solutions, Inc. The agenda note. The planning staff recommends that the police jury indicates no objection to this project application. Bullet 2 is a proposal of Miss Eleanor Barillo, care of Sean Mays. Planning staff recommends that the police jury indicates no objection to this project application. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 14, take appropriate action.
To uphold planning and zoning with stipulation.
On request by Cole Enterprises LLC to rezone from R2 to I1 to allow heavy industrial development at 2737 Bayou Den Road in Ward 4. I have a motion by Mr. Farnham and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 15, take appropriate action
To uphold
on
planning and zoning.
a request by Cole Enterprises LLC to abandon Leon Cole Road in Ward 4. Have a motion by Mr. Farnham and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 16, take appropriate action on the
Move to uphold.
Second.
Planning and
request
zoning.
by Larry and Steve Holly to abandon approximately the west 685 feet of Fountain Cemetery Road in Ward 5. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Anderpont to uphold planning. Is there any discussion? Any objection?
Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it says against.
Thank you.
Just wanted to verify that. I'm sorry. We're good.
Okay. Any, what was I? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. You messed me up, Mr. Bean.
I know. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Brame, the recommendation was to abandon, and they voted against it, and that's why it's worded this way. So your vote to uphold means you will not abandon the road.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Item 17, consideration of adopting an ordinance amending ordinance number 5596 as a request by Thibodeau Property Group to remove stipulation number 4, which required a low-profile monument sign made of brick. I need a motion.
Move to uphold or whatever.
A motion by Mr. Anderpont.
Second.
Second by Mr. Spell. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
I do. It's not in my district, and it doesn't really matter to me one way or another, but Mr. Vickers, we set all this stuff out at the beginning, and then we end up allowing anybody to put any kind of sign that they want. I mean, kind of, what's the point? Why are we even requiring that if we're going to overturn it every time somebody builds something?
Well, I think that what the issue was here is that he wanted a freestanding sign for advertisement there. This is not in a design corridor whatsoever. And it was probably a mistake back in 2008 to have a monument sign there. This gentleman has a nice business there, and he's really done a pretty good job. And he's agreed to put some screening and some other things in as well.
So was that just a requirement of a rezone back from 2008?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So who made that mistake, Mr. Vickers? Was that you?
I have no idea.
All right.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
May I answer, Mr. Landry? The important thing about this one was that where he's located, if you put the monument sign, people exiting couldn't see in one direction down the street. So it really was a serious
Yeah,
safety.
we don't want that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Fornum.
Thank you, Mr. President. What kind of sign is he planning on putting here? Because it's right on the border of my district, so I pass by that facility every day.
It's just a freestanding sign. It'll be, it'll have a pole, metal pole, and so forth. It'll be lit. I think it'll be a digital sign.
I guess the question is it going to be one of those gigantic signs that sticks way up in the air like a billboard type thing, or
No, it's not going to be.
put any kind of special advertisement or anything up in the air? It's just going to be more of a higher profile sign on the existing site, because he's got a spot that's carved out of his concrete parking lot that was for the monument sign, I assume, that he never placed in there.
Well, that's correct. He never did place it in there, and what he's got is, and there might be if you turn over to your packet, I think there's an illustration of what the sign would look like. I mean, it's a rough drawing of it, but it's pretty much what it is.
Get there eventually. Pass those 47 million signatures. Okay. So we still may have a visibility problem with only a 5-foot gap. Possible.
Well, I guess it's possible, yeah.
Because it would be a safety hazard right there with the proximity to their driveway coming in, with a sign that doesn't have sufficient clearance on the bottom. for the traffic to seek the traffic coming from the south.
Well, it'd be the same thing, though, if you had a monument sign.
Well, I know that, but
I mean, that would even be worse.
we may actually need to lift that sign up a little bit more to create enough distance.
We might be able to do that, work with him.
I don't have a real big heartburn with it. That, you know, it's there's some people that were concerned about that in that area about what he was actually going to put. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham. Mr. Scott.
That still puts it 25 feet tall in this drawing. I think one of his concerns, and I'm just speculating, you can't see his advertising from the Highway 90 looking south. So unless you get above those railroad tracks, which is obviously this is getting above those railroad tracks looking north, you're going to be able to see the sign. So, you know, I'm just speculating, but I would think he's trying to get it up in the air where people could see a sign, and that is high up in the air. That's next to a billboard right there. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Farnham.
I got one more. Does he plan on having multiple business signs on this particular one? Because that place does have about 4 different buildings in it.
Yes.
So they're going to share. They're all going to share this sign.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham. Any other discussion? I have a motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll go to item 18. Consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 5783 adopted on February 4, 2010, which allowed LCL Investments, LLC, to purchase the following described property for $9,000. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 19, consideration of adopting resolution authorizing agreements between the police jury and the following entities for the purchase of permanent generators utilizing Gustav Ike CDBG disaster recovery funds. I have a motion by Mr. Angelpont and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 20, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the renewal of a memorandum of understanding between the police jury and the state of Louisiana through Moss Regional Hospital to provide credential health care provider services at the Calcasieu Correctional Center. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an agreement between the Police Jury Office of Juvenile Justice Services and the State of Louisiana Office of Juvenile Justice, wherein the Office of Juvenile Justice Services will participate in the Title 4E Federal Foster Care Reimbursement Program. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Sias. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Sias.
Mr. Bowe, not more or less just, I was looking at this particular item, and I was trying to understand it because it states that it is a Title 4E Federal Foster Care Reimbursement Program. Yet it's still, they said a reimbursement program.
That's correct.
Yet still it comes back and says to assist and support the agency program of foster services to eligible children. Where's the reimbursement part of that? I don't understand that.
They do time studies at the Office of Juvenile Justice Services, and any amount of time that you spend trying to keep kids out of foster care, they basically pay you by the quarter. And just to let you know, it's about $23,000 a quarter for the time spent on keeping kids out of the foster care system.
Okay, so the reimbursement is to the people who are involved with assisting.
To the different agencies that do this, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Science. Any other discussion? Any objection? Thank you, Dane. Hearing none, that motion will carry. We'll go to item 22, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the following as it relates to the police jury's formal written procurement policy. Mr. Jerry Milner.
Thank you, President Bright. What we're asking the jury tonight is to approve a formal written procurement policy. Our goal is to have a written policy that addresses local, state, and federal procurement laws. We previously did not have a formal written set of policies, so we'd like to that included all this in one document for this purpose. We need this now even more, is more important than previously because of the $1 million that we do have gotten in federal grants in 2005 as a result of these disasters in 2005 and 2008. And we are administering these grants, and we need to comply with the federal procurement laws. So this is one of the major needs, is to have a written and documented procurement policy. Going down to the second bullet, we're also asking the police jury to authorize a purchasing agent to sign off on purchase orders, to be able to approve purchase orders. She has been doing that in the past, but we like to, because purchase orders are contracts, to have the jury, at least on an annual basis, approve of the purchase agent, or giving the purchase agent the authority to approve purchase orders. And the last bullet we have on here is to authorize the parish administrator to execute any procurement-related contracts under $100,000 for the calendar year 2011. Part of this procurement policy, we're going to ask for contracts for services and for public works, starting at $25,000. We usually have previously put that in place for formal procurements above $100,000. We're asking to bring it down to $25,000. This would, and have a contract for $25,000 above. It would help us, the vendor and the police jury, make sure we define the responsibilities of both parties and make sure that there's something documented for that. And we like the administrator to keep our our purchasing efficient, running effectively and efficiently, to allow him to sign the contract, since we have lowered the amount of down to $25,000. We would continue to come to the jury with all formal bids and requests for proposals as we have in the past. But we just would like to implement this and now have a formal written policy, and with these bullet points also approved by the police jury.
Thank you, Jerry. We have a few jurors have some questions for you. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think he answered my question now.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Milner, is this including just purchase of materials, or is this covering bidding out projects as well?
It's going to be for procurement of materials and public works and services.
So if there is something that we need to contract out, this procedure will be including bidding that work out, like if there's some maintenance that needs to be done or pipe that needs to be installed, it's under this?
We're going to, right now we ask for written quotes for $1,000 below. Now we're going to ask for written quotes for $2,500 and above. Procurement of commodities, you have to bid that out at $30,000 and above, and bidding out of public works, I think it starts at $100,000. So, if your question is if it's below, if it's for services, we would, at $100,000 above, we would go out for request for competitive bids. If it's for public works, it would be $100,000 above.
So if it's less than $100,000, we would not bid it?
Right. It's the same as we do now in that area.
Okay. Mr. President, I don't have any objection. I just, and I think it's good that we have written rules, but I just think it's fair to see and to make sure that we're collecting multiple bids on things. Jerry had mentioned that we solicit multiple quotes.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're maintaining that practice, because I know perception is reality, and I just want to make sure we don't get in a position where it's perceived that we're just handing out work. So I'd like to just make sure that we're receiving multiple quotes, and even though not required to officially bid a project, still have multiple quotes for that under $100,000.
We are doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Milner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know that I really like it. It just doesn't sound good. Maybe I just don't fully understand it. But let's just say you need an item, and it's $60,000. Explain what's going to happen now. Tell me what's going to happen.
If it's a commodity, if it's above 30,000, you get a formal bid. So you'd be getting.
Okay, so it's a commodity and it's $25,000.
You'll get 3 quotes, 3 written quotes.
And I'm going to tell you, I have complete confidence in you and your staff and the purchasing and all the people that are here now. But everybody that's here now isn't always going to be here. And whenever we change something like this, I mean, we just got to be real careful.
I think we're going to be doing more, by getting contracts for anything 25,000 and above. Right now, we don't do that. So a lot of times, that's going to define the responsibility and eliminate questions that we presently have with these small contracts. So I think we're going to be doing
more restrictive.
More restrictive. We're going to have more assigning responsibilities. We have those documented. So if there's any questions that come up, we'll have a contract to help define that.
Because, I mean, I know of a case, and not at this government agency, but at a different government agency, of somebody writing things down and saying, "Oh, I got 3 quotes,"
we're also going
and they really didn't, because
we're
they
going
just
to
made it up.
We're going to establish one other procedure. We're going to have all the quotes going to one particular party that's not part of the person who's requesting the quote. So we're going to have the quote sent to a fax machine in somebody else's office that all he does is handle the quotes, receive the quotes, and responds back and tells who's the winner of that quote. So
And no contact
there's going
with
to be
vendors.
no contact with the vendor. So he's just going to be the one, that kind of independent third party, to kind of keep that separate and apart, to quit this. I mean, somebody came and say, well, somebody messed with the bids. They got one bid and told the guy what the bid was. So if you have all the bids sent to an independent party and that doesn't request a bid, well, then that's going to eliminate that possibility.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Let me call on legal counsel.
Just briefly, if I may address Mr. Landry. What we really have been trying to do, and a lot of people have worked on this, is to standardize exactly what we do and don't have different departments having different understandings. So everybody is getting one of these little, I call it a cheat sheet, and it has specific instructions on what you do. If it's 0 to 2,500, and it's for materials, services, public works defined, and so on. So then it says here our local requirements. Then the next level is 25 to 59,999, and so on. And so this will go out to every department. Everybody will have this who needs anything. So when they get ready to purchase something, it's a standardized procedure throughout all of the police jury agencies. And that was the reason.
Can I get a copy of that?
I'm sure you can. No, it's private.
We'll get you a copy.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand we're adopting this procedure. Are we changing a dollar amount that can be approved?
By us? No, sir. No, sir.
The
no,
dollar amount's not changing.
No.
We're establishing a standardized procedure.
Right, and these written policies need to be in place if we ever get reviewed by the federal government, to review the, our administration of these federal grants. They'd want to have a written policy in place and something that they can review. So in order to be in compliance with...
Would this same policy follow not only goods, but services?
Yes, sir. Public works services, commodities, and services, and public works.
Including consulting and...
Right, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Mr. Spell.
Well, I have another question, but my first question is this information will also be available to special service districts that utilize financial management of the parish?
Exactly. We're trying, like Mr. Smith had outlined, we're trying to get standardized, procurement policies throughout, and they will be given these guidelines and these cheat sheets, and we'll assist them in trying to understand and to implement them.
Okay. And my second question, a follow-up to Mr. Hassan's question. We are still practicing quality-based selection with professional services, or no?
Yes, it will request for proposals, and, you know, you can request for qualifications to make sure that you can judge your bid based upon, you know, certain criteria besides just price, so that can be factored into. You could come up with a formula before you go out for bids, what each one of them, how you're going to grade that bid based upon qualifications, based upon price, and other factors that you want to be included within your request for proposal.
So these procurement practices will not be bidding out professional services?
Well, you can request, yes, you can request for a bid for, I guess they call it request for proposal. They call it request.
Wouldn't be bid.
It's a request for proposal, and you can specify, you know, if for audit purposes, for example, you want somebody who's an experienced auditor, you know, that has more than, has enough staff to be able to do your job. So you can put in certain criteria besides just price, so you make sure that the person who gets the job is qualified to do the job.
And just for my colleagues and the general public, the reason I'm asking this question and it's personal experience, and obviously I am not involved with any engineering with Parish because that would be a conflict of interest, but you don't want to hire an engineer that might have a questionable track record to design a building versus someone that you know is proven with the standards of engineering practices. And I'm just using that as an example. So I just want to make sure that whenever it comes to any professional service that we're still utilizing quality-based selection, which is allowed by law.
It's not just price.
So that we are in a position to receive quality professional services versus some services that might get us in a bind down the line. So
that is available, and that would be, you know, part of your request for proposals. You can, you know, request certain qualifications besides price that makes try to ensure that you have a capable person doing the job.
I wanted to request that clarification, and you answered that. Thank you, Mr. Milner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Okay, I have a motion by Dr. Mackey. Can I have a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Griffin. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Jerry. We'll go to item 23. Take appropriate action on bids received by the Parish Purchasing Agent on February 2nd, 2011 for water
Move to
level
accept.
monitoring stations. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 24,
Move on,
consideration
24.
of adopting a resolution of condolences to
Second.
the family of Miss Jenabeth P. Smythe. Ms. Trimming.
Thank you. I know we've been here a while tonight, but I think that Jenabeth, she's 33 years at the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury as the parish secretary. I had the honor of meeting Miss Jenabeth Smythe in 1979 when I was appointed to the Calcasieu Parish Public Trust Authority from the Chamber of Commerce, the joint chambers of commerce from all of Calcasieu Parish, and served on there until 1991, when in 1992 I was elected to the police jury. Jenabeth was so full of life, so bright. She was just a little ball of energy. A small lady, but powerful. And we were able and fortunate to be able to go to some places together through the public trust, and I got to know her more on a personal basis than you normally would. You know, someone that's on the staff. Well, as time went on, we got to be extremely good friends, and her and Red were just awesome people, both of them. And Jenabeth was so dedicated to this parish and to the people of this parish. And not only did she do her trust work, she did the parish work. And she took a little greenhorn, like I'm sure she has a whole lot of us in our times that were here when Jenabeth was here. And one step at a time kind of taught us the ropes, how to get things done. The main thing we all want to do when we get elected is, how do you get things done? Well, Jenna Beth had the formula, and she was willing to work and help you learn how to be able to get things done for your constituents and for your people. She did for me, and she did for so many others before me. And I just have to tell you that she had a wonderful heart. She is just one of the finest people, and I'm proud that during last January, when we did have the state convention in Calcasieu Parish, that she was able to come to our Friday night party for the parish party. And I know the weather was bad and all, but she made a special effort to be there. And all of us that knew and loved her were able to have that time with Jenna Beth, to be able to sit and visit about old times. And if you're here tonight and you know, Jimmy, I know you're nodding, and I know all of y'all are nodding, because when you can say somebody's priceless, Jenna Beth, priceless. And to have any time with her was worth everything. And I know this is very hard for Kathy, because every Saturday Kathy has gone to Jenna Beth's house and taken care of her every weekend, and went there and made sure everything was okay for her. And she was a mentor and a mother figure and a best friend. And Kathy asked if I would say something, because she knew that it would be very difficult for her. I just hope I've honored Jenna Beth enough. I thank you for your patience since we've had such a long meeting. But Jenna Beth Smythe, God bless your family. God bless you, Kathy. And we lost a good friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimming.
Move
Okay.
to pass the resolution.
Okay.
Was that already done?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Ms. Griffin. Any discussion, objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 25 is an advise that adjudicated property will be offered for sale by the Director of the Division of Planning and Development on March 29, 2011.
Move we adjourn.
With that said, motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.